Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blue, cover it all here on Commander Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So I've stressed this before. I think I've glossed over it at least 2 or 3 times. Let's actually talk about the difference between 5-5 and 4-4. Now, I really don't have to explain this to you. You guys are smart. You understand the difference between 5-5 and 4-6 and the implications that that can have on our season. Look, if we win the game, it changes everything, the outlook of our season, the confidence that we play with going forward. What, the division record right now, we're 0-2 in the division. It changes that and how you view us moving forward. We would be done with the Eagles. You've got another date with the Cowboys. They've got to come to Washington. You've got 2 with the Giants in back-to-back games. Remember, there's a bye week in between the 2 of them. But again, you beat the Eagles, you split with the Eagles, and all of a sudden it changes the way you're viewed in league circles. It changes the confidence that you play with. Styles make fights. I actually think our style matches up with the Eagles' style of play, and I think we can actually slow them down enough to give us a chance. Now, there are some concerns in the game, and I'll talk about those as we continue to get closer and closer to game day. But 5-5 is a massive difference from 4-6. And again, if we lose this game, our season's not done. We got plenty of football left. It's starting to get late in the season now. We've hit double digits in terms of the weeks, right? Now it's no longer week 7 or 8, and you can keep talking about, oh, we still got plenty of football. Now it's week 10, right? So we're starting to get deeper into the season, but even if we lose this game and we're 4-6, you've got games on the schedule that are winnable. You've got to take care of business, something that we haven't done consistently throughout the season, which is why we find ourselves in this predicament that we're in at 4-5 instead of, right now being 6-3, which is probably what we should be. But that's nor here nor there, or worst case scenario, 5-4. But at the end of the day, you want to win this football game because 5-5 gives you a chance to start a new win streak and actually capitalize on some opportunities that lie in front of us. It was funny, because again, I talk about this all the time. Everybody looks like food, right? Everybody looks like food and we're preparing to eat. But on the flip side of that, we look like food to everybody else. And so it was funny watching the Falcons game last night and hearing them talk about the Falcons and how had they beaten Carolina last night, the schedule really set up for them because they weren't playing a team over 500. We're in that mix, right? We play the Atlanta Falcons in 2 weeks in week 12. So it was funny hearing that because, again, we look like food to the Falcons, right? But they look like food to us. The Texans look like food to us. Those are games that we look at and say, hey, we need to find a way to win that game. If we have any aspirations of making the postseason, we need to beat those teams. You go to 5-5 by beating the Philadelphia Eagles. You then go to Houston the following week. It's the only stretch this season where we play 2 straight games on the road. It's the first and last, right? So you go on the road again next week. You find a way to beat the Texans. You come back home. The Falcons await. You beat them. Now that's a 3-game win streak, and you're 7-5. Okay? Now, again, that's so far into the future, and you're counting wins with a team that can't find a way to beat teams that they're supposed to beat and do the things that they're supposed to do. I'm not saying that that's what we would do, but you beat the Eagles, and it changes the way you start viewing the remaining portion of your schedule. You lose to the Eagles, which is more likely than not the outcome of Monday night's contest. You fall to 4-6, even if you take care of the Texans next week. Even if you take care of the Falcons the week after that, you're 6-6. You got nothing to show for having this stretch of football where if we lose to the Eagles, right, but you win the next 2 games after that, think about what we would have accomplished in the last 7 games. We would have won 5 out of our last 7 games. Think about that for a second. You won 5 out of your last 7 games, and you look up and you're only 500 at 6-6. It hits totally different if you beat the Eagles, you beat the Texans, you beat the Falcons, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're 7-5 and you've won 6 out of your last 7. And now you're 7-5. Now it actually looks like you're making headway. But if you lose to the Eagles and then you take care of business and you've won 5 out of your last 7, you're still 6-6. You could then lose to the Giants right before the bye week, and now you're back under 500. Even if you lose to the Giants, if you go on a 3-game winning streak here, by beating the Eagles, it starts with beating the Eagles and getting back to 500 at 5-5, and then you get to 7-5, and then you lose to the Giants. You're 7-6 going into the bye week that is going to be much needed, and that will be the break that you need to finish up the season strong. And those final 4 games that exist on the schedule, home for the Giants, at San Francisco, and then home for Cleveland, home for Dallas to finish up. So theoretically, this game right here, and again, you could beat the Eagles and then go and trip up and lose to the Texans. That's the type of shit that we do, right? Or come back home after defeating the Texans and lose to the Falcons. Nothing's etched in stone with this team. We're all aware of that, okay? But beating the Eagles gives you infinite confidence. If you knock off the lone remaining undefeated team, if you beat the team that embarrassed you earlier in the season, and all of a sudden you look up, you say to yourself, hell, if we can beat them, then we should be able to beat anybody. It changes everything. 5-5 hits different for this ball club than 4-6. You go to 4-6, you're right there with Atlanta and all the rest of the struggling teams that are fighting for that 7th and final wild card. You go to 5-5, all of a sudden you're not relegated to just the 7 seed. Now you start getting greedy, which is why I wanted Minnesota so bad, because you win that game, you get to 5-4. You go to Monday night, you're playing with house money, because we would have been playing with house money at 5-4. Whether you beat the Eagles or not, you're 5-5 or you're 6-4. Either way, you're feeling good about yourself, right? Going into the next 2 games. But more importantly, had you beaten Minnesota, you're looking at Dallas and the Giants and say, hey, y'all better not slip up and trip up, because we ready to take your spot and get the 6th seed or the 5th seed. But honestly speaking, the 7th seed is where it's at. If the Minnesota Vikings end up being the 2 seed, which is where they are right now, and the Eagles hold on to the 1 seed, the 2 seed is where it's at. I mean, the 7th seed is where it's at, because I look at Minnesota and I'm saying, I ain't afraid of them. I don't care if the game's in Minnesota, Washington, on the moon, Jupiter, Germany, Mexico. I feel good about playing the Vikings again. It's a good football team, but we know we can go toe-to-toe with them, and we probably can beat them. But I'm not looking to settle for the 7 seed. If I can get to the 6 or the 5, that's where I want to be. But you can't talk about 5th seed, 6th seed, or hell, even the 7th seed if you can't win ball games. And you can't just keep stockpiling wins against lesser opponents. We've beaten teams on our schedule. Again, you can only beat who they put on your schedule. But we beat Jacksonville. They're not over 500. We beat Chicago. They're not over 500. We beat Green Bay. They're not over 500. And we beat the Indianapolis Colts, and they're not over 500. We're doing the thing that we chastised the Eagles for doing last year, which is not beating a team over 500. At some point, you got to pull up your bootstraps and say, okay, that's a good ball club. Where do we measure up? Where do we stack up? Can we get it done? I'm tired of coming close and feeling good, and I don't feel good. But other people trying to convince me that, hey, that's a good football team. And we were right there. I don't want to hear that shit. There are no moral victories. I'm not looking for a juice box and a gold sticker and someone pat me on the back and saying, hey, you did a great job. Go get them next time, Tiger. I'm not 8 years old. You either win or you lose. And we got to start beating some of these good football teams. We're going to get a lot of cracks at it because we got 2 against the Giants, another one against Dallas, another one here against Philadelphia. The 49ers, when we see them, by the time we get to them, they're going to be over 500 more likely than not. Okay? We're going to have some tough opponents left on the schedule. We got to start winning some of these games. If we plan on being a bonus participant, we plan on playing bonus football and being a playoff participant, we got to start beating good football teams. It needs to start on Monday night against the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't think of a better time to start. No time like the present. 5-5 is so much different than 4-6. We took the path that had the most resistance. We could have been 5-4 already. And 5-5, even if you lose to the Eagles, would have hit differently. We would have been in a good spot. But now we're 4-5, and if you want 5-5, you got to go through the best team in football right now. So why not just do it? In other news, we heard from the coordinators today, Scott Turner, Jack Del Rio. Before we get to what was said from them, because there was a nugget in there that a lot of people ran with, and it bears mentioning and discussing, so we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, let's take a look at the injury report heading into Week 10's contest. Remember, it's a different week, as I've mentioned already. Friday's practice is what Thursday's practice would normally be. There's going to be another practice on Saturday. That's more of a walkthrough. And really, Ron is taking it easy on the players this week. They were in the bubble. Again, inclement weather on the East Coast. And so they were in the bubble. They didn't go super hard, but they went hard enough. Saturday is going to be more of a glorified walkthrough, which is what Friday normally is. So, again, a little bit different of a week. But let's take a look. So this is the smallest our injury report has been since probably week 2 of the season, maybe even week 1. Okay. We've had a laundry list for the last month and a half. This is as good as it gets, but it's concentrated. That's the problem. I'd much rather have a list of 9 dudes and 7 or 8 of them are really insignificant special teams contributors, backups, depth guys, and say, all right, there's really nobody of real consequence or substance on this list. This is a concentrated list of guys that really matter, okay? Cole Holcomb, not going to play in this game. As you can see, didn't practice yesterday, didn't practice again today. I already told you yesterday I didn't think he was going to practice this weekend. I didn't think he was going to play. And he may be a little bit further along in terms, or he may be a little bit further off, rather, to coming back than we were led on to believe, because, we were thinking, foot injury, he'll be back in a couple of weeks. That's how they kind of played it. This man's not even on the practice field. He's not even out there, which means he's not even close. It's one thing when you're on the side field, you're stretching with the team, then you're heading to the side field with the trainer and things of that nature, or you're getting individual work with your position groups, and then you go over to the side. He's not out there, period. That tells you he's not close. That's like a guy with a concussion, not even out there. J.D. McKissick, neck. Again, remember, the neck injury was the same injury that took him from us at the end of last season when we were trying to mount that comeback. We had won 4 in a row. He got hurt in that very last game against Seattle, and or I think the last game was against the Raiders. He got hurt in that Seattle game. We didn't have him for the Raiders game. We were hoping to have him back for the Dallas game. He never came back. His season was done. So that's a little bit concerning that he's been out now 2 weeks and he's still not practicing, and they don't really have an update for us. So something to keep an eye on there. Jahan Dotson, I'm not even going to touch that, because the last time we got excited, there was a setback. I'm not touching that one. But as you can see, full on Friday. That's good news, okay? Honestly speaking, the last time he was fully healthy was the last time we played the Philadelphia Eagles, because he got hurt the following week against Dallas. Didn't finish that game. So I hope that he is able to go. It'll really add another major piece to this offense and some more punch to an offense that could use another capable body out there to really help this team score more points, something that we haven't done since week 2. Pretty much. I mean, I guess the 23 against Green Bay wasn't bad, but 23 points isn't a whole hell of a lot either. Tyler Larson, this is becoming a big story here, because he was on the bike today. He did not participate in practice, and he was limited yesterday, didn't participate today. Scott Turner tried to downplay it, like, I just think they're kind of giving him a little bit of a break. He's dealing with a few things, but we didn't really want to push him today. Think he's fine. That sounds good, but I ain't buying that shit. If he was fine, he would at least practice in a limited capacity. I mean, he may ultimately play, but clearly he is banged up. And that's the one position that we can't afford, center. That's what happened to us the last time, if you recall, when we played the Eagles, is we had an injury to Chase Roulier at the very end of the Lions game. We went into the Eagles game thinking, oh, we'll just stick Wes Schweitzer in, we'll be fine. And Wes got his ass whooped. He got hurt in that game. And it really impacted us because we were so bad up the middle against the Eagles. They kept killing us with their defensive tackles. Their ends started to get in on the fun. There was no communication up front, which comes from the center. We had no no pocket. Carson Wentz had no pocket from which to work from. And a lot of that really stemmed from the lack of consistency at center in that game. The snaps were terrible, if you recall, that game. All game long, Carson Wentz is bending down to catch the football. And West got his ass whooped in that game. He really, truly did. And so we've been so much better up front when Tyler Larsen came back. I honestly feel like similar to what happened on defense when Cam Curl came back in week 3, that's kind of what happened when we stabilized the center position with Larsen. We got better as a unit up front. The pieces have still been moving around. We've still moved right guard multiple times. We've still moved right tackle multiple times. We've still had moving pieces and parts. But center has been stabilized, and I felt like that stabilized the entire line. You take Tyler Larsen out, and you go back to Nick Martin, and it's the Dallas game all over again. I don't want to see what that looks like. But Scott Turner already confirmed if it's not Tyler Larsen, it's Nick Martin. Nick Martin's not terrible, but he ain't Tyler Larsen. So I hope he can play, man. This is not the game for him to not be able to go or play, start the game, but can't finish it, and Nick Martin has to come in. I hope Tyler Larsen can give it a go. Hopefully that extra day will be what he needs to give him a chance to be able to go. But we'll see. And then David Mayo, hamstring. You know what? I think I prefer David Mayo over John Bostic. I may be crazy, but I think I prefer Mayo. And look, what are we talking about? You're talking about a glob of Mayo over, Boom Bostic. Neither of them are ideal, right? Like, you're in trouble if either of those guys are playing meaningful snaps. One of those guys is going to be playing meaningful snaps, which doesn't sit well with me, especially against this Eagles offense. I think it's really going to hurt us. Cole Holcomb played really well the first time we played the Eagles, and now he's not playing in this game. So this is what we talk about. When we talk about the lack of depth at linebacker coming back to bite us in the ass, here we are. This is the kind of game where you're going to see it on full display, I think. So that's Washington's injury report. Let's take a look at the Eagles. Again, there's nothing here. I told you guys this yesterday. There's nothing here. Two guys that are in the secondary, Josh Jobe and Avonte Maddox. Avonte Maddox is the real big one. Hamstring, that's their nickel. If he can't go, they'll be relying on someone else to give them quality snaps in the nickel. They'll be fine. If he's not able to go, I like the matchups that we'll have inside at the nickel, but we've got to be able to take advantage of it. I don't think he's going to go. He hasn't practiced all week. That hamstring is a serious deal. I think he may be out. That may be the only guy. Obviously, they've got the big defensive tackle who probably won't play in the game, but, such is life. They'll be fine. They're pretty much healthy for the most part, as you can see. So we heard from the coordinators today. Scott Turner spoke. He talked about the offense, specifically against the Vikings, and, kind of, downplayed the struggles of the offense, sort of like Taylor Heineke did, which I'm not happy to hear. And again, I hope Scott's more of a upfront, blunt type of dude. So usually if he's not happy about something, he'll say it. So the fact that he tried to downplay it like, oh man, we just had some drives stall out. We were really good in the second half. We scored in the opening possession. We had a drive go all the way down the field, and we got stopped on fourth down. Then we had a long drive and then went for a touchdown. And then, of course, we had the interception. He's like downplaying it like we were absolutely unconscious on offense. Like, I felt like the Green Bay game in the second half, the offense had it on tilt. Like, we could really do no wrong unless we did it to ourselves. I think that was another game where we had a fourth down that we went for and then we didn't get it, if I'm not mistaken. But we moved the football with relative ease in the second half against Green Bay. We just couldn't punch it in. We ended up settling for like 2 or 3 field goals. But that's not what happened against Minnesota. I never felt like we were in a great offensive rhythm. I thought we did some solid things in the second half, but we left a lot of meat on the bone, and I've already explained that to you. So I didn't love the fact that he tried to downplay it, like, oh yeah, if we just execute a little bit better in certain situations, we were really moving the football in the second half. Okay, cool. If that's how you feel, I don't really see it that way. But talked about the impact that Jahan Dotson could have, and he was like, it's huge if we can get him back. It'd be a big boost for this offense. Talked about J.D. McKissic's injury and how that impacts the team. He said something that kind of didn't sit well with me. He said, that obviously the guy that would shoulder the most load there would be Antonio Gibson, which is fine by me. I like the fact that Gibson would be on the field more, but he said that may force us to scale him back in other ways. And I'm like, don't tell me you're going to take him off of kickoffs, because I love him in that, role. But if that's what has to be done with no J.D. McKissic, look, you got Jonathan Williams as a back as well. He's healthy now. Leave him on kickoffs, if you ask me, and just figure out the rest. But maybe he was talking about more of, first and second down, work that would have to just, go to Brian Robinson, and he'll just be more of the third down back, which, again, I don't think that has to be the case for Antonio Gibson. He doesn't have to be relegated to just third down back. I think he needs more opportunities on first and second down. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is J.D. McKissic's hurt. The rest of the running backs have to pick up the slack. He said the guy that's going to shoulder the most burden there is Antonio Gibson. I prefer it that way. Anyhow, he talked about the quarterback position in particular, and he made it sound as if Taylor Heinicke is really still in play to be the starter past Carson Wentz being healthy. Now, obviously, he said it's coach's decision. They'll talk about it. But, the way the question was phrased from Nikki Javala was sort of like, hey, is this the final audition for, Taylor Heinicke to show that he belongs, as the starter moving forward? And Scott didn't, take the easy, hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, approach. He kind of said, look, it is what it is. It's a fluid situation. And, we'll see what happens when, Carson's healthy. He's not healthy right now. So we're really just gonna prepare with Taylor to try to beat the Eagles, and then we'll go from there. But he made it seem as if he left the door kind of open. Which, Ron has kind of done the same thing, but Ron has been more consistent with his answer, which is, hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Carson's not even healthy right now, so we don't even need to have that discussion. I've said this. I contend that they're going to put Carson back in when he's healthy, whenever that is, whether it's week 11 versus the Texans or week 12 versus the Falcons. Whenever he's ready to go, I think they're going to stick him back in there. But again, I do think this is a big game, and I do think if Taylor Heinicke somehow engineers a victory over the Philadelphia Eagles in a game in which he plays well, it's not just the defense being dominant and the offense barely doing enough. Like, if we go out and we score 27 points, or we score 31 points, or we score 30 points or 29 points, and the Eagles only score 20 and we win this game, and Heinicke is 24 of 31 for 303, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, there's a conversation to be had. Absolutely. So we'll see. Jack Del Rio spoke, and, we got candid Jack today. Normally we get deflective Jack. Like, I'm not answering that. I'll let coach handle that. I'm not telling y'all that. That's too game plan specific, which is fine. I love that, about Jack. Jack's not going to give you anything. But they asked the right questions today, and Jack was game. They talked about the hiring in Indy with Jeff Saturday, and Jack lit up like a damn Christmas tree. Started talking about it. They overlapped at ESPN, so he got to know Jeff Saturday. And so he was like, look, I'm a football fan. So I was really into it. I watched the press conference. I'll be keeping tabs on how Jeff does. And so he got into that. But, you know, for most of you, you don't give a shit about what the Colts are doing or Jeff Saturday being hired. You care about this team. And the thing that he said that I thought was noteworthy was when he was asked about Chase Young. And he said, look, Chase is not full speed yet. You know, tons of energy. We know that's what Chase brings to the table, but he ain't full speed yet. But when he's ready, we'll put him out there. A lot of people took that as, oh, wait a minute. Maybe Chase isn't playing this week. I didn't take it as that. Do you really expect Chase Young, who had major knee surgery and multiple things had to be repaired, a patella tendon, the ACL, and other damage that was done to his knee. Do you really think he's going to come back and look like pre-injury Chase Young just like that? Do you really think he's going to be moving at 110 miles an hour? Or do you think it's going to be a process? I keep telling you guys, this is going to be a process. Even when he hits the field, you can't expect Chase Young to be the Chase Young that run Defensive Rookie of the Year. Okay? Just him being out on the field and having to be accounted for matters, right? I still think he's going to play. I still think he's going to be on a pitch count on Monday Night Football. If you didn't think he would be ready by Monday, you would not have started his clock last week. Because by starting his clock last week, you've essentially put yourself in a position where if he doesn't play this week, he's got to play next week, or else you've got to make a decision to activate him or put him on IR for the remainder of the season. I don't think they would have done that if they didn't think he could go this week. I think it's the TJ Watt approach. They started his clock the week of the Eagles game, and it could be the same thing, right? They started his clock the week of the Eagles game. He didn't play in that game. They had a bye week after that. Now he's going to play against the Saints. That's 3 weeks. Chase, they started his clock last week against the Vikings. He didn't play in that game. He could not play against Philadelphia and then play next week against Houston. That's very possible too. I think they're still aiming for Monday. I think he's going to be on a pitch count, and we'll know probably by Sunday. They don't have to do anything until Sunday. So we'll probably know by Saturday, to be honest with you, after practice tomorrow. But they could still play it close to the vest if they don't want to give Philadelphia any insight as to what they're doing, and then they would do it Sunday. Activate him, and he'd play. I still think he's going to play. Jack Del Rio's comments didn't spook me any. I don't expect him to be at full speed. Chase Young at 75%, Chase Young at 85% is still better than James Smith-Williams at 100% or Casey Toohill at 100%. So I'll take Chase Young not moving at the rate of speed that we're accustomed to seeing him move at. Just his presence on the field changes things. I think he's going to play on Monday night because it's a massive game. He's close to being back where they need him to be. They're not going to rush him. If they don't think he's ready, they won't play him. I think the plan all along has been Monday night against the Eagles. I think the extra day is going to sway them in the direction of playing him. Had this been a Sunday game, he may not have played. But I think the extra day gives them another opportunity to evaluate him and gave him an extra day to prepare. I think they're going to give it a go. Now, you could also look at it on the flip side and kind of the similar situation with Brian Robinson. And I remember thinking they weren't going to play Robinson in week 5 against the Titans because there was a quick turnaround on Thursday night the next week against the Bears, and it was just too quick to be having a guy that, you know, had gotten shot twice and had all this rehabilitation, and you want to play him that many times in that concentrated of an area, and they did. I was shocked. You could bring back Chase Young, but then you got a quick turnaround, short week, travel, all of that stuff, and then you got a game on Sunday. Or do you want to save him, not play him on Monday, and get ready for Sunday against the Texans the following week? That's something else to take into consideration. I think he's going to play, but we will see. So that was the biggest nugget from Jack Del Rio. He talked about Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and how they're playing. And he just said, no, look, these guys were really young when we got here, and they've matured. And you know what? There's some validity to that. You know, as guys get more and more comfortable in this league, they play better and better. You're seeing that. And I'm guilty of this. I was guilty of putting a cap on Jonathan Allen. I was guilty of putting a cap on Deron Payne. Both of those guys have shattered the caps that I've put on them, and they've exceeded all my expectations for their careers as to how dominant they could be. The ceiling for those guys, the sky's the limit. There is no ceiling for either one of these guys. With the way they're playing, it sucks that Jonathan Allen only has 4.5 sacks, because a lot of people like to go to the statistics to determine the level of play of a player. But if you've watched, his impact has been the greatest of any of the defenders that we have on this team, and that includes Deron Payne, who leads the team in sacks. Jonathan Allen has been an absolute menace to offensive lines everywhere this season. Same with Deron Payne. And so it's just fun watching those two guys go. They've got to do whatever it takes to keep them together. That's the heart and soul of our defense right now. If we can get one of these defensive ends to step up, and maybe when Chase Young comes back, Sweat will step up. Sweat's getting to the quarterback. He's not getting him down. He's not getting to him fast enough. We need Sweat to start getting to the quarterback with more regularity and actually impacting the play. Whether you hit him while he's throwing it and it's incomplete, I'll take that. It don't have to be a sack. But the pressure when you hit him, he still gets the ball off and it's complete, doesn't do anything for us. Makes that quarterback think, damn, I got to get rid of this thing. They're coming. But Kirk Cousins got his ass whooped. But every time Sweat hit him, for the most part, he was able to get the football away before a sack happened. Now, there were a couple where he hit him and the ball was incomplete. But there were also times like when Deron Payne lit him up and he had to leave the field. That's still a 47-yard gain to Justin Jefferson. Like, we got to find a way to get to these quarterbacks before they get rid of the football. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to behind enemy lines. Let's take a look at these Eagles. Washington started the week as 10-point underdogs. It then went to 10.5. It's now at 11. Okay, so the disrespect is real. We deserve it. I'm not sitting here. I'm not going to cry about, oh, why? I can't believe they got us. No, we deserve to be 11-point dogs. They're undefeated. We haven't scored, 24 points or more since week number 2 of the season. We look like food. Last time we played them, we mustered 8 whole points. They dominated us. They were up 24-0 at halftime. All of that stuff they take into consideration. And so, hence, we're 11-point dogs on the road on Monday night at Philadelphia. And I relish this role. I relish this opportunity for the fellas to go out and prove everybody wrong. And we'll see what happens. I just want to throw a couple of numbers at you as we go behind enemy lines. Because I want to go back to the first game, talk about how we met our demise in that game, how we've changed and how we've stayed the same since that game, and how that's going to either help and benefit us or it's going to hurt us against the Eagles going into this Week 10 matchup. So in Week 3, one of the things that really hurt us in that game, remember, and I've said this a million times, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, they only scored in one quarter, okay? Now, while that's a gift, it's also a curse because you gave up 24 whole points in one frame. That's awful, right? But you didn't give up any points in any of the other quarters, so that's great. But 24 points in any frame is utterly ridiculous, and we did that, okay? So the thing that really irked me in the first matchup, outside, of course, of the pressure that was applied to Carson Wentz and the amount of sacks that was taken and how awful we looked on offense, was the amount of big plays given up against the Eagles. Like, honestly, if we are better against the big play in that game against the Eagles, we have a chance to win. Our biggest fault in that game was the inability to stop giving up big plays, chunk plays, and whether it was via penalty or a big throw, a missed tackle when Cam Curl came back. That was his first game back. and he missed the tackle on Dallas Goedert on a tight end screen that should not have scored a touchdown. Should have been a minimal gain of 1 or 2. And he misses, he whiffs, and he scores the touchdown from 23 yards out. These are the types of things you cannot have, right? We gave up 7 plays. Okay, I'm going to call them explosives. We have 7 explosives in the game. These are plays that I went and I charted every single snap that was taken in that game. And any play 20 yards or more, I charted as an explosive. Whether it was a penalty, as I mentioned, a run, a throw, whatever, catch and run. 7 plays of 20 yards or more in that game from the Eagles. That's ridiculous. There were 2 of 40 or more in that game. Okay? Again, utterly ridiculous. All right? We didn't make them earn it in that game. When they did have to earn it, their drive stalled out. You know why their drive stalled out? And we need to be better against them on third down because I thought they had some third down conversions in that game, but they also didn't do great on third downs. The Eagles right now are the 4th best third down offense in football, completing third downs at a 46% clip. They're 45.9% on third downs. That's 4th best in the NFL. Okay? They're very proficient and they do a great job of finding themselves in third and short and manageable often so that they don't need much. They don't need a 13-yard completion to move the sticks on third down. They just need 4. They just need 6. They just need 3. They just need 2. And they're a really proficient offense because they are so hard to stop with Jalen Hurts' legs being entered into the mix and so much that they can do off a read option and RPOs. They drive you nuts. So they're a really proficient offense on third down. But guess what? We are the 3rd best third down defense in football right now. We're giving it up at a 32.8% clip. So essentially 33% of the time. Teams are converting on third downs on us. That's 3rd best in the league right now behind Tennessee and Green Bay. So that's our strength is get you to third down and get off the field. We did a really good job against the Eagles the first time around, but they did have some third down conversions. Most of them were slants to A.J. Brown. If you recall that game, we had a 4th down stop, a big 4th and 1 stop. They tried a jet sweep. We weren't having it. They had a 4th down. We got a 3rd down stop right before the half. They went for it on 4th down, and he threw the fade route to Devontae Smith on Kendall Fuller for a touchdown. In the second half, the reason that they didn't score any points is because on third downs, we got off the field. So that plays right into our hands. We got to get them to third down, however. We have to stop giving up explosives. That's what killed us in the first matchup. Another way that we can neutralize Philadelphia is by keeping their offense off the field, right? Problem is the Eagles defensively are, and so the league average on both sides is 40% on third downs. That's the league average. It's 39.7. So the league average is 40% on third downs. That's how teams are converting at a 40% clip. Okay, so right now we're keeping teams at 33% on third down. So we are killing it on third downs. But our offense is one of the worst in football on third downs at 34.2%. We're 26th in the league on third downs as an offense. We know this, okay? The 2 of 11s, the 1 of 11, the 2 of 12, the 3 of 10. We've seen this over the last 5 weeks really start to become a problem, right? So that's not a surprise. The Eagles aren't great on third downs defensively. They're giving it up at essentially 38%. 37.9%. So 38% of the time. So they're right around the league average almost. Like, we can convert on these boys. And what you're seeing, I said this, and Eagles fans tried to jump down my throat. Lord Brunson didn't want to side with me. And then he came back around and then finally said, yeah, you're right. Like, why do you want to argue with me just to come back and say that I'm right? And then I saw him on Twitter bitching about the same thing that I was trying to tell him. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to say you guys are trash. You just have a problem. Like, there's this narrative that the Eagles don't have any weaknesses. They struggle to stop the run. They're giving up large amounts of yardage to teams on the ground. Now, we're not a great rush offense. We're one of the worst, as a matter of fact. So it doesn't play into our strength, but it doesn't mean we can't have some success. So I'd like to see us take advantage of the Eagles' shoddy run defense and parlay that into some success throwing the football. Because when they were having a tough time stopping the Texans, they started to overcommit to the run. They started selling out. They were bringing 7 and 8 guys up to the line of scrimmage. But they knew the Texans couldn't threaten them. They knew the Texans didn't have the horses outside to make them pay for being over-aggressive to stop the run. So that's why they did it. If they dare do something like that against us, we've got the horses, especially with Avonte Maddox potentially being out. If we get Jahan Dotson back, we got 3 guys across the board that can hurt you. So I don't expect them to be as aggressive to stop the run. We've got to take advantage, and we've got to be able to run against their front. We've got to make them respect the run game, bring up an extra defender, and then see if we can't exploit them down the field. But it starts up front in the trenches. We cannot be as bad as we were the last time. The Eagles are not a high sack team. But literally, they had 8 sacks against us. 8 or 9 sacks against us the first time. So most of their sacks on the season came against us. That can't happen again. And if it does, we'll have a similar fate. And I'll just leave you with this. The first time we played the Eagles, yeah, it was an ass whipping. And it never felt like we were going to come back. But we lost that game 24-8. We got all the way down to the Eagles' 1-yard line and couldn't punch it in. We got to the Eagles' 14-yard line and then went backwards and didn't get any points out of that. So what I'm telling you is, and then we got a safety and then we got a touchdown. So what I'm telling you is we had opportunities in the second half of the ball game. We moved the football. The Eagles hadn't taken their foot off the gas pedal. They didn't just say, hey, you can have whatever you like. We went to the short passing game. We had some success. We moved the football down the field. We got in the striking range, and we couldn't get it in. We're a different team now, though. We've had much more success in the red zone. We've got more options to get the football to, and we've got a guy that has legs that can extend the play. He's going to have to be more decisive than he was against the Vikings, however. He can't be what he was last week, or else we won't have the success that we need to have in order to have a chance to beat the Eagles. If he plays like he did in the second half against Green Bay, if he plays like he did in the fourth quarter versus Indianapolis, we're going to have a chance to beat the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday night. But we'll see what happens. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. This is a matchup that we'll talk about once more on Monday. I'll have that video out bright and early for you guys to consume. I have my keys to victory. We'll go into the game plan and, of course, my prediction for the game. I'll just tell you this. This is a winnable football game. Styles make fights in this league. I think we match up well with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's family business. Y'all know what that means, okay? I don't have to explain that to you. The fact that they're running over all of these teams, that shit don't fly in the division. That don't fly when it's a family member. We let them get away the first time. We weren't prepared. That's what it felt like. We were not prepared. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. It's a different ball club playing with a different swag and a different level of intensity. But again, we can talk about that, and we could talk about Styles making fights, this, that, and the third, but if we don't go out and execute, we fall behind, something that we really didn't do in that game. We didn't fall behind early. They didn't score their first point, and it wasn't but a field goal until the second quarter. It wasn't until Carson Wentz's fumble, that's what opened up the floodgates. He fumbles the football, they recover, you get the screen that shouldn't have been a touchdown to Dallas Goedert, they were off and running from that point forward. So you get the Ron, ball that he could have challenged, which set up the field goal. Then you get the Carson Wentz fumble, the screen that shouldn't have been but a 1 or 2 yard gain, and then boom. Just like that. You look up, you blink twice, it's 24-0. If we can get off to a similar start defensively, but add in a little bit of, and like I said the first time, and I've said this already, we actually moved the football in the first half. We got into the vortex. If you watch the film, you know what the vortex is. We got into the vortex. We got to avoid being sucked into the vortex. But anyway, you guys enjoy your weekend. I'm definitely going to enjoy mine. I hope you do the same. We get to watch football freely on Sunday. You should enjoy this. We don't get to do this again until week 14 when we actually have a bye week. So enjoy Sunday, and we'll come back and we'll chop it up on Monday. Sound like a plan? All right. Have a good one. Take care.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.